All right. So this lesson is mainly a recap of the accessory organs and GI tract organ stuff, but it's going to do more of a focus so that we concentrate on where does chemical digestion occur, where does mechanical digestion occur, and where does absorption occur. And we're going to look at these key functions of the digestive system and determine, where do I find each of these components. Okay? So we're going to cover, just kind of review what those main functions we need in a digestive system are first, and then we'll look at our digestive process in terms of mechanical, chemical digestion, and absorption. Some of these words will be a repeat of words that came from prior notes down. So if that does happen, you don't necessarily have to write the whole definition down, but maybe like a quick reminder of what that is when it comes to your notes. Okay, so just a recap of digestive functions, reminding you the key players of why we need a digestive system is digestion, to break down the food, and absorption, to take in the nutrients that you actually need, to bring it to your blood, and then ultimately deliver it to your cells. You cannot do absorption without digestion, and in particular, without chemical digestion at the end of the day. Metabolism, which is new, is the actual term we use for when nutrients in your cells are used to do cell reactions. So someone who has a very high metabolism burns through the nutrients that are being delivered to the cell very quickly, like energy food molecules, so that you need to provide more food to them through your digestive system to maintain the same metabolism amount, I guess. So someone with a very high metabolism burns through food very quickly, which means they have less fat stores on their body and they need to intake more food to provide their cells with energy. Metabolism can be influenced by your age, the amount of exercise you do, because that changes the amount of muscle you have on your body, your gender, or I shouldn't say gender, your sex, as well as genetics. So everyone's metabolism is different. And just a really quick recap of mechanical versus chemical digestion. Mechanical is actually physically breaking the food into smaller bits. And chemical digestion is the actual act of enzymes breaking the bonds inside the molecule. And you have that reaction when you break a bond is called catabolism, if you don't know that word already. And chemicals that help assist those enzymes, like bile or hydrochloric acid, are also included in that. Mechanical digestion makes chemical digestion more efficient, okay? But chemical digestion is where you need to ultimately be in order to get absorption. Many digestive organs do a little bit of both, though, for example, mechanical digestion may be very particularly done well in your mouth and your stomach, and not so important in your small intestine. All right, so where does mechanical digestion occur if we're going to just think of mechanical digestion? I kind of wrote them in order of where they occur, but also they kind of go in order of where it's most effective. So your mouth and its teeth, through mastication and tearing and grinding that food into a bolus, really does the vast majority of mechanical digestion, your mouth and teeth, at least initial mechanical digestion. Your stomach does quite a bit as well through churning your food, your bolus food, into chyme. So it gets that so your mouth is helped chewing it into kind of a mushy but solid state. And then your stomach is basically turning it into a liquid slurry. So it will go from solid to liquid by the time it reaches your stomach. Your esophagus and intestines don't really do too much in terms of mechanical digestion. But the act of the muscles squishing food through that tube and down, like again, the act of pushing toothpaste up to one side of your of the toothpaste tube, that's kind of very similar to peristalsis, the motion of peristalsis. And sometimes when you mess up a little bit and some of it squishes backward and you push it back up forward, that's basically the act of segmentation. They're both similar muscle movements, but that slight squishing will do a little bit of light kneading, light mixing of the content, but ultimately it doesn't do a huge amount of mechanical digestion, though it's very minor. And again, these are the pictures. So moving stuff one way through the tube is peristalsis, and segmentation is when you squish it forward, though sometimes stuff squishes backward, and you just kind of do a little bit of both, where you're kind of mushing it forward, but sometimes you're a little bit off, but you're going to eventually mush it forward, but it does a little bit mixing back and forth before then. Where does chemical digestion occur in your GI tract? All right. So this isn't in order, but it kind of is in reverse order. So the most chemical digestion is done in your small intestine, and then the least is done in your mouth. Well, yeah, to a degree, in terms of amount of stuff needed. All right. So your salivary gland provides amylase. Amylase is going to do chemical digestion of carbs. I'll mention this later. Your stomach is going to do a decent amount of chemical digestion thanks to two things. Pepsin is a key player here through which is an enzyme for proteins. So if you're eating meat, it will not be digested into chemically in your mouth, but it will be digested chemically in your stomach. However, hydrochloric acid, sometimes people think stomach acid does the digesting itself in your stomach. It doesn't, but it does provide the pH that helps activate the enzyme itself, pepsin. And one of the key things here is because your pepsin, your body is made of proteins, right? So proteins would eat through your stomach if you weren't protected. And because the acid is so strong as well, that can cause damage. You actually really thick protective mucosa in your stomach to help protect your stomach from getting worn away by its contents. Finally, your small intestine does a lot of chemical digestion, really thanks to all the stuff that's being dumped into the duodenum. So, the duodenum is receiving lots of enzymes in addition to helping chemicals that will help those enzymes do their job. So, the liver and gallbladder provide bile, which is not an enzyme. It's a chemical that helps mix the fat into your into smaller droplets in your small intestine, so that it can be broken down by enzymes coming out of your pancreas. So your pancreas, again, as we mentioned in previous notes, makes bicarbonate to help make the appropriate pH for the pancreatic enzymes to work, and also help protect your small intestine. And one of the key things here is trypsin is a replacement protein enzyme, or protein enzyme, because pepsin only works in a low acid or a low pH environment, an acidic environment. Pepsin breaks down proteins in your stomach, but trypsin breaks down proteins in your small intestine. And this is kind of a summary of where those different food molecules are digested. So in this case, everything is digested in your duodenum thanks to your pancreas producing enzymes for every type of food molecule. And this is the list of macromolecules, carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Now, in addition to your pancreas, though, amylase or carbohydrates are additionally broken down in your mouth from salivary glands. And your proteins is broken down by protease. Protease is the name of an enzyme that breaks down proteins. And in this case, it's called pepsin, and there's additional source of it from your stomach beyond your pancreas producing it in your small intestine, okay? The end product is a monomer, or the smaller molecule from the larger molecule, which might be complex carbohydrate, a fat or lipid, a protein, or a nucleic acid. These are the main three things our body is seeking when it comes to nutrition. So this is a good table to kind of use as a reference, etc. Depending on your class, you may have learned a lot about different types of macromolecules, either in biology or in your anatomy class, if your teacher did a little bit of a review on macromolecules. Okay, so we've broken our food into these smaller molecules. Now we can absorb it into your blood. Where does that happen? It happens basically in the same place that a lot of digestion occurs, in your small intestine. So When you dump all the enzymes into your food material in your small intestine, it travels through the small intestine, it's being broken down on the inside of the tube. And then it's touching the walls of your small intestine, which gives lots of opportunity for that food material to slide past lining that has blood vessels inside. And those blood vessels can then absorb all the smaller molecules across the walls. Okay? So, because there's so much lining there, only very small monomers, like the smallest molecules of your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, the fatty acids, the glucose, and the amino acids, are capable of passing through that mucosa layer into the layer beneath it called the submucosa. And the submucosa is the layer that has all the blood vessels that can then deliver that food into the rest of your body. Your small intestine is the main site of absorption thanks to its length. It is 6 meters long. That's 18 to 20 feet long, okay? Which is compared to your colon, which is about 4 to 5 feet long, or 1.5 meters long. Now, it's got all those villi, those little fingers inside of its surface that's going to help extend and introduce more surface area for more blood vessels to kind of touch the food that's passing through. And then this small intestine also has much thinner layers of mucosa and submucosa to really allow the passing of material through it. And that's going to allow it to absorb pretty much almost all your nutrients and most of your water that's in your food. So your small intestine is a big player. Though there are 2 other organs that do just a little bit of absorption. All right, so your large intestine can absorb the remaining 10 to 20% of water that is in your digestive process. So most of it is absorbed by your small intestine, but your large intestine gets the remainder of it. When you get diarrhea sometimes it is caused by bad bacteria in your food. And what happens is that bacteria in your food reaches your large intestine, and then your large intestine, and populates your large intestine. And then your large intestine, it starts making toxins, and then your large intestine has a reaction in spasming because it doesn't want to absorb the toxin back into your body. And that's going to mean that you have less, and sometimes it happens to your small intestine to a degree as well. But because your body doesn't want to absorb the poison contents from the bacteria in your food, that means it's going to absorb less. You're going to have less reabsorption of water, which is going to lead to diarrhea. That's why you get the symptoms of that from eating bad food. Your stomach can reabsorb some stuff, but not really nutrients, because your stomach walls are so thick to prevent acid from going through. But the thing that prevents acid from going through is layers and layers of thick, fat-like tissue. So, as a result, your stomach can actually absorb very small molecules that are non-polar. Because if you remember, non-polar means it's fat, it likes fat, or it doesn't like water. So as a result, some drugs like aspirin or alcohol and vitamins can actually pass through your stomach and go into your body. Remember, food stays in your stomach for 2 to 3 hours before reaching your intestines. So if you're taking a drug that you want to act within an hour after taking it, you actually want a drug that can pass through your stomach and then get into your blood system via your stomach. So medicine that takes a day to work, that means it has to get to your small intestine to be absorbed. But medicine that will act within an hour, that's because it's getting absorbed through your stomach, because it's a non-polar molecule that's very small. And that allows it to slip past that thick protective mucosa to get to the rest of your body. But nutrients are too large that they can't do that. So if you track a nutrient molecule, you can usually track all the organs that work on that one nutrient molecule. For example, if we're talking about protein, the first sign of protein being either digested or absorbed is actually in your stomach with pepsin. All right, there's no digestion of it besides being chewed up, but that's everything, by your teeth. But it doesn't get pretty much directly digested until it reaches the pepsin in your stomach, and then it's going to continue being digested all the way. It's going to be digested in your small intestine by the trypsin from your pancreas, and eventually, now that it's digested and broken down into amino acids, then it can be absorbed into your small intestine. And if you have too much of that, recall your liver can store excess broken down food or amino acids if you need it. So this is, and anything you can't absorb then gets lost through feces. So this is kind of a classic breakdown of, hey, how does this one macromolecule protein get digested and absorbed? And ideally, you should be able to do this with all the key players: carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. You'd be able to go all the organs involved in digesting that stuff and absorbing that stuff. All right, this is another picture of mechanical versus chemical digestion as broken down by different parts of the GI tract. If you're curious, you can read this to help remind you of different elements of absorption and chemical mechanical digestion, and use it as a reference if needed. All right, so key takeaways. Food is digested in smaller molecules that can be absorbed into the blood for delivery to cells. Metabolism is the use of nutrient molecules by the cell. Mechanical digestion occurs 3 ways to allow that breakdown of large food portions into smaller bits that can be accessed by chemicals and enzymes. So that's chewing, segmentation, and churning. Chemical digestion is done by digestive enzymes and other chemicals that facilitate the function of those enzymes. So, for example, carbohydrates are broken down by the enzyme amylase from the salivary glands in the mouth and from the pancreas in the small intestine. Proteins can be digested in the stomach by pepsin and in the small intestine by trypsin, which comes from the pancreas. And lipids are digested in the small intestine using lipase from the pancreas. Bile, though, it's not the actual enzyme used to break lipids, but it does help mix that fat or lipid into the chyme so that lipase can then be used to break it down. Finally, chemical digestion is necessary to get the food molecules into smaller molecules to be absorbed. Absorption is mainly done in the small intestines, but there are some other absorption that can occur elsewhere. So the stomach can just do some absorption of vitamins and drugs that are nonpolar. And in your large intestine, it absorbs 10 to 20% of the water, though most of it is still absorbed by the small intestine. In your large intestine, it does take in about 10 to 20% of the water that's coming through, as well as some other minor things. All right, so that concludes the notes. Move on to any other work you have. Bye.